I used to think I was just forgettable. Like, not in a tragic, violin solo sort of way. More like, if life were a group photo, I'd be the blurry one in the back. Shirt slightly wrinkled, smile half-formed, cropped out when someone adjusted the frame. That's kind of how it felt growing up as the youngest in my family. I'm Ethan, youngest of 4. I had 2 older brothers, Cole and Brandon, and 1 sister, Elise. The Holy Trinity. And then there was me. The unexpected encore nobody asked for. It started small, like most fractures do. When I turned 8, my mom hosted a birthday party for me at the skating rink. I remember the cake, mint chocolate chip, the paper hats, and one very clear memory. Cole saying, "I'm not coming. I've got better things to do." At the time, I thought he meant homework or football practice. Found out later he went to a movie with friends. Brandon skipped my 10th birthday for a boys' weekend with his college buddies. Elise made it to my 12th, but left after the cake, claiming she had a migraine, then posted a poolside selfie with her friends 20 minutes later. It stung, sure, but it wasn't until the birthday rule became official that I realized this wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. The rule wasn't written down or spoken outright. That would have made it easier to call out. No, it was more insidious than that. It was always phrased in careful language. "This year's just for adults, Ethan. You'll get it when you're older. We're doing something low-key. Don't worry, we'll celebrate with you another time. You're still a kid, bud. These things aren't really for you yet." But yet never came. When Elise turned 21, the family threw her a rooftop party. I helped string up lights for hours, but when guests arrived, I was ushered out. "Too many people," my mom said. "You'll be bored anyway." I sat in the garage eating leftover chicken tenders off a paper plate. I try not to take it personally. For a while, I chalked it up to being the youngest, or maybe just bad timing. But by the time I was 16, I started seeing it for what it was. They simply didn't want me there. Not really. Not in the way I wanted to be wanted. I remember my 16th birthday vividly. It was supposed to be my day, right? Sweet 16 and all that jazz. I even invited a few friends over for cake and video games. But an hour into the party, my mom got a call. Elise had just gotten engaged. And just like that, the living room emptied. Everyone packed up and left early for her impromptu engagement dinner. I stood by the window holding my unopened gift from my aunt, probably socks, watching taillights vanish down the driveway. My birthday banner still hanging, crooked and lonely. That night, I didn't blow out the candles. I let them burn down until the frosting turned waxy and the room smelled like disappointment. After that, I stopped really celebrating my birthdays. By the time I was 18, I stopped expecting much at all. That's when I started pulling away, quietly, the way you do when you know loud doesn't help. I'd stopped asking to be included, stopped getting my hopes up. My parents thought I was just maturing. My siblings called me distant. The truth was, I just got tired of being the tag-along. The extra, the name they remembered after a pause. It all came to a head when Cole texted me out of nowhere that fall. I hadn't heard from him in months. "Yo, big party Friday night. Birthday stuff? Bring your girl if you got one." Clinking beer mugs. "No, hey. No, how've you been?" Just a beer emoji and an invite to be background noise at his 30th birthday bash. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I wrote back. "Can't. Got better things to do." Just like he'd said to me all those years ago. He never replied. And that was the moment something shifted inside me. Not in an angry way. Not even in a petty way. Just in a "this isn't worth the fight anymore" kind of way. For the first time, I didn't feel like proving my worth to them. I didn't need to show up just to be forgotten. I didn't need to beg for a seat at a table where I was always served last. That night, I opened a new journal. On the first page, I wrote, "The list, people who made me feel like I didn't belong." And I started writing names. Not to shame them. Not to one day hold it over them. Just so I wouldn't forget what it felt like. Because if I forgot, I might forgive too quickly. And sometimes, healing means remembering why you built. You know that moment when you realize you've been chasing people who were never looking back? For me, it hit on a stretch of highway somewhere between Ohio and Indiana. I was in the back seat of my friend Javi's beat-up Civic, window cracked, cold wind clawing at my face, and that one Lumineers song playing faintly from the car stereo. The sky was this dull, watercolor gray, like the world itself couldn't be bothered to feel anything. It was supposed to be a simple weekend road trip, just me, Javi, and his cousin Maddie. College tours, cheap snacks, endless playlists. But what it turned into was something a lot heavier, A weekend where I finally saw the difference between chosen family and the kind you're born into. We were sitting at a diner booth, greasy table, sticky menus, the works, when Maddie asked, "So, you're close with your siblings?" I don't know what made me pause. Maybe it was the way she asked it, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I mean, not really, I said, swirling a straw through my flat soda. Javi glanced at me. "You've never really talked about them." "Yeah," I replied. "They don't really talk about me either." That was the first time I said it out loud. The first time I heard how small my family made me sound. Over pancakes and too much syrup, I ended up telling them about the birthday thing. The parties I wasn't invited to. The subtle digs. The moments where I'd sit at the kids' table long after I'd grown out of crayons. Javi shook his head. "That's brutal, man." "Like, really?" "Yep," I said. "I used to think it was normal." Maddie looked genuinely stunned. "It's not." And just like that, a crack formed in the foundation I'd spent years convincing myself was solid. Maybe I wasn't overreacting. Maybe I'd just been gaslighting myself into thinking it didn't hurt. Later that night, we checked into a cheap motel, one of those places where the air conditioning rattles like a dying animal, and Javi handed me an old spiral notebook to use as a journal. "To keep track of your greatness," he joked, but I used it for something else. I flipped to a blank page and wrote in all caps. The list, part 2. Things they never noticed. Page 1. When I made honor roll and no one showed up to the ceremony. When I got my first job and they said, "Cool," and went back to talking about Elise's internship. When I got accepted to college and my mom said, "Oh, Brandon went there for a semester too." You'd think writing that stuff down would feel bitter. But honestly, it felt like freedom. It was a record, a receipt, proof that I wasn't just making it up, that there were actual scars beneath the skin. After we got back from that trip, I stopped showing up to family game nights. I stopped replying in the group chat unless it was necessary. My mom noticed, of course. She always noticed just enough to feel entitled to ask questions, but not enough to actually understand the answers. "Is everything okay?" she asked over dinner one night. I shrugged. "Sure. You've been quiet lately." I poked at my food. "Maybe I just don't have anything to say." She frowned like I'd said something offensive. But that was the thing. My silence was finally saying all the stuff I never had the guts to before. Around that same time, Cole posted a photo of all 3 of my siblings at a fancy restaurant, dressed up, glasses raised in a toast. The caption: "Family night out. Nothing better." No tag. No mention. No text saying, "Hey, wanna come?" That night, I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just added another entry to the list. They keep forgetting I exist. I've started doing the same. The more I pulled away, the more peaceful my life became. Weird, right? Like cutting off oxygen but somehow breathing better. Javi noticed, too. He became my anchor during that time, always showing up with junk food, random playlists, or just the kind of silence that didn't feel awkward. One night, we were sitting on the roof of his house, wrapped in hoodies, looking out at a neighborhood that had already gone to sleep. "You ever think about just leaving it all behind?" I asked him. He tossed a peanut M&M into his mouth. "All the time. What stops you?" He was quiet for a beat. "Guilt. Fear. Habit. Take your pick." I nodded. "Same." Then he looked over at me, serious for once. "You don't owe them your silence just because they gave you none." That line lived in my head for days. I wasn't angry at my family anymore. Not really. Anger takes energy. What I felt was more like a void. The kind that comes after the storm, when the skies cleared and you're standing in the wreckage thinking, "Now what?" That summer, I stopped trying. I stopped waiting for them to notice I was hurting. Stopped hoping they'd ask how I really felt. Instead, I started making a new kind of list. People who make me feel seen. Javi was the first name on it. And I promised myself this. I'd build the kind of life that made me feel present, even if it meant leaving behind the ones who kept me. The first time Javi brought up marriage, we were folding laundry. I know, romantic, right? He was struggling with a fitted sheet, muttering curses under his breath, and I made some sarcastic comment about how domestic he looked. He grinned, tossed the mangled sheet at my face, and said, "Well, better get used to it. We're gonna be doing this forever." And just like that, it wasn't a joke. We both froze. Not in fear, more like realization. Fast forward 8 months, and we were standing in a sun-drenched botanical garden, holding hands, trying not to cry as Javi's cousin Maddie snapped engagement photos while pretending not to cry either. It felt like a full-circle moment. And for once, I wasn't thinking about what my family would say. I wasn't thinking about whether they'd approve. I was just thinking, this is mine. But of course, life doesn't let you sit in joy too long before someone shows up with a spoon to stir the pot. About a week after we got engaged, my mom called out of the blue. I saw Maddie's post. "You and Javi, huh?" she said, like she was commenting on the weather. "Yep," I replied. "We're getting married." "That's nice." Her tone had that soft warning built in. The kind that says, this conversation is about to turn. "You thinking a big wedding? Church? Beach? Are we doing traditional vows or something more progressive?" I stared at my reflection in the microwave door. "We're thinking small. Backyard. Just people who care about us." She paused. "Just long enough." "Well, of course, your siblings will be there." There it was. I closed my eyes. Breathed in. Counted to 3. I'm not inviting them. Silence. Heavy, awkward silence. You could practically hear the needle scratch off the record. "What?" "I'm not inviting them, Mom." "Ethan." Her voice dipped into that sharp whisper she used when she was angry but didn't want to sound like the villain. "They're your family. Were they mine when I turned 10 and they left me home for Cole's birthday dinner? That was different. You were young. I was their brother. That didn't change." She huffed. "This is about your feelings again, isn't it?" "No, it's about respect." I said it sharper than I meant to. "I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm doing it because I'm finally allowed to choose who I want standing beside me. And it's not them." She tried every tactic after that. Guilt, denial, deflection, the classic, "What will the family think?" As if that were ever my problem. A few days later, the group chat lit up. "Hey, little bro," Elise messaged. "Saw the big news. When are the invites going out?" Then Brandon, excited for the wedding. "Let us know the details." I stared at the screen. The same people who hadn't remembered my graduation. The ones who hadn't checked in during my first year of college. Who didn't know Javi's favorite color or even what city we lived in. And now they wanted in. I didn't reply. Instead, Javi and I sat at our kitchen table that night, wine glasses in hand, scribbling out a list of people we actually wanted there. People who mattered. People who made us feel like home. It was 27 names long. None of them were blood. Javi looked at me after we finished. "You sure?" "I've never been more sure." And yeah, I knew it wouldn't go over well. You don't redraw the map of a dysfunctional family without a few earthquakes. The next morning, my dad called. "You've made your mother very upset." "Dada." "She's crying. She says she doesn't even know you anymore." I held the phone away from my ear. "That line? That one right there?" It was the same thing she said when I dyed my hair blue sophomore year. When I told them I was gay. When I got a tattoo. Funny how her knowing me always seemed to depend on whether I did what she wanted. "Maybe she never did," I said quietly. "Don't be dramatic," he snapped. "I'm not. I'm just done shrinking myself to fit in a family that never had room for me." Click. He hung up. The messages kept coming after that. Brandon sent me a gif of a dumpster fire. Real mature. Elise went full Facebook martyr. Nothing hurts more than being erased by someone you love. Hashtag family first, hashtag pray for us. I didn't respond. I didn't post. I didn't explain. Because here's the thing people forget. You don't owe anyone an invitation to your peace. Especially not the ones who only show up when there's cake and a camera. A week later, I mailed out the invitations. Handwritten. Thoughtful. Each one sealed with care. 27 envelopes. Each one a small declaration. "You made me feel seen. You made me feel loved. You're welcome here." None of those letters went to my siblings. And for the first time in my life, that didn't feel sad. It didn't take long. The first shot was fired exactly 48 hours after the invites were sent. I was at the grocery store, standing in front of a very confusing wall of almond milk varieties. Seriously, who needs chocolate cherry coconut oat fusion? When my phone buzzed. From Elise. "So, is this some kind of mistake? Or are you actually not inviting your family to your wedding?" I stared at the screen for a solid minute, like the almond milk might whisper an escape plan. Part of me was tempted to ghost. But the other part, the one I'd spent years suppressing, was done swallowing my voice. To Elise. It's not a mistake. I'm inviting the people who showed up for me. That doesn't include you. Delivered. Read. Silence. I finished shopping, bought the most expensive almond milk just because I could, and went home. By the time I got there, the group chat was on fire. Cole. Not cool. Ethan. Not even a heads up? After everything we've done for you. Brandon. This is a wedding. not a vendetta. Elise. So we're just cut off now? That's it. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked out onto our balcony, handed Javi my phone, and said, "Read this. Tell me if I'm crazy." He scrolled, eyebrows lifting higher with each message. "You're not crazy," he said, handing it back. "You're just done being their doormat. And they don't like that." That night, we ate dinner on the floor. Chinese takeout, our dog curled up at our feet, laughter echoing through the apartment. And even though my phone buzzed every few minutes with another passive-aggressive ping, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. Until my mom called. I knew it was coming. I answered on the second ring, already bracing myself. "Ethan," she said, with the breathy urgency of a soap opera character about to faint. "What is going on?" "I think you know. Your siblings are devastated. Elise is crying. Brandon's furious. Cole says you've ruined the family dynamic." I let out a quiet laugh. Pretty sure the family dynamic ruined itself a long time ago. Her voice hardened. "You can't punish them for things that happened years ago. You were a child. You're grown now. Let it go." That was the moment I realized how deep the denial ran. "Mom," I said, calmly, "I'm not punishing them. I'm protecting myself. They're your blood, Ethan. And for 18 years, that blood left me out of every table, trip, and milestone. But now that I've built a life without them, suddenly I'm heartless." "You're being spiteful," she hissed. "No," I said. "I'm being honest." She cried. She begged. She threatened to boycott. At one point she said, "What will people think when they don't see your brothers and sister at the wedding?" I didn't miss a beat. "They'll think I invited people who actually showed up for me." Click. She hung up. Again. The following week, it got worse. Elise posted a cryptic caption under a filtered sunset photo. "Some people forget what family really means. But I'll never stop loving them. Broken heart, hashtag still hopeful, hashtag family is forever." The comments rolled in. Cousins. Old church ladies. Even my high school history teacher. All offering support for Elise, the victim of my brutal betrayal. Javi showed me the post. "They're rallying," he said. "Classic playbook." "I don't get it," I muttered. "They ignored me for years. Now I exclude them once, and suddenly I'm the villain." He set his phone down. "Because you broke the rules." "What rules?" "The unspoken family ones. You're supposed to take what they give, smile, and say thank you. The moment you say, 'That's not enough,' you're the problem." It hit me like a punch to the ribs. He was right. My entire life, I'd played the quiet one. The agreeable one. The one who'd make room at the table even if it meant eating standing up. But now that I was saying, no more, they couldn't handle it. So they did what all uncomfortable people do, spun the story. Aunt Karen called. "Ethan, sweetie, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Your siblings love you. Then why didn't they act like it when I needed them to?" She stumbled. "Well, they were busy. Life gets in the way. But now they're suddenly free enough to demand a seat at my wedding?" Click. Another call dropped. That week, I did something unthinkable. I left the family group chat. No warning. No goodbye. Just gone. The next day, Cole texted. "Grow up, Ethan. You're acting like a drama queen." I blocked him. Then Brandon. Then Elise. I even blocked Mom after she texted a picture of me as a toddler with the caption, "You were such a sweet boy. I don't know what happened to him." I didn't reply. Because he's still here. He just finally started saying no. And the world didn't end. It just got a lot quieter. And a whole lot. The morning of our wedding, I woke up to birdsong and nerves. Not panic nerves. Not, "Oh no, what am I doing?" kind of nerves. Just this strange, buzzing stillness, like the world had stopped spinning for a second to ask, "Are you ready for this?" And I was. Our venue was a little backyard in the outskirts of town, tucked between wildflowers and a creek that sounded like laughter when the wind hit it just right. Javi's uncle had offered the place, said he used to host poetry readings there in the 80s, and it had good soul energy. I didn't know what that meant, but the first time we saw it, I felt it. It didn't need chandeliers or gold leaf napkins. It just needed us. That morning, while Javi got ready with his cousins in the little guest house, I stood in front of the mirror in my suit, fingers fumbling with the boutonniere. My best friend Danny walked in, already dressed, holding a tiny bottle of whiskey in 2 plastic cups. "To steady the hands," he said, grinning. I laughed. "You know me too well." We clinked, drank, and stood in silence for a second. Then he looked at me and asked, "You good?" I hesitated. "Yeah, just thinking." "About them?" I didn't need to ask who them meant. "Not really," I said. At least not in the way I used to. I wasn't thinking about whether they'd show up. They wouldn't. Or whether they were sitting somewhere stewing in resentment. They probably were. I was thinking about how different this day felt. How light it was. How it wasn't about proving anything. It was just about being present. The ceremony started just before sunset. The sky turned gold like it was giving us its blessing. The aisle was lined with wildflowers, and the arch Javi's cousin built out of driftwood curved overhead like a door to something better. Maddie cried the second the music started. Danny did too, but pretended it was allergies. I didn't even try to hide mine. When I saw Javi walking toward me, his smile wide and honest, I felt everything all at once. Every lonely birthday, every ignored text, every time I stood in the background, waiting to be noticed. None of it mattered here. Not in the garden. Not with him. We wrote our own vows. Javi went first. I don't care where we are, as long as I'm standing next to you. Even in the frozen aisle of a grocery store, if you're there, it's home. Everyone laughed. Then cried. Then laughed again. When it was my turn, I looked around at the 27 people sitting on folding chairs under twinkle lights. Every single one of them had made me feel loved. Not out of obligation, but because they chose to. I took a breath and said, I spent a long time trying to be seen by people who looked right through me. But then I met you. And you didn't just see me, you remembered the details. You held the small things, the forgotten things. You gave me the kind of love I thought only existed in movies and daydreams. I looked him in the eyes. And today, I'm not just marrying you. I'm letting go of everything I used to chase. And stepping into everything I never thought I deserved. When the officiant said, you may kiss, I swear the entire garden exhaled. The reception was exactly what I'd always dreamed of, and never thought I'd have. There were string lights overhead, mismatched chairs, homemade food, and a playlist we'd built together over 2 years of late-night drives. We danced barefoot. We ate pie instead of cake. Danny gave a toast that somehow managed to be hilarious and emotional without becoming a sob fest. But the moment that stuck with me the most came later in the evening. I was sitting alone on a bench near the edge of the garden, the laughter and music fading into a soft background hum. I just needed a moment to soak it in. And that's when Maddie walked over, holding a piece of lemon pie and a curious look. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. Just taking inventory. She smiled and sat beside me. You did it, you know? Did what? You built your own table. And filled it with people who actually know your worth. I didn't respond right away. Just stared out at the soft glow of lights and the people I loved dancing barefoot in the grass. Yeah, I whispered. I guess I did. Later that night, someone told me they'd overheard that my sister Elise threw a dinner party the same night as our wedding. A little alternative gathering, they called it. For people who weren't invited. I just laughed. Like, deep belly laughed. Because honestly, that was perfect. Let them have their dinner. Let them spin their stories. I had my story now. One I built from the ground up. One that didn't rely on people who only showed up when it suited them. As the night wound down, Javi pulled me into one last dance. Just us. No music. Just the sound of the creek and the rustle of the wind through the trees. He whispered in my ear, you happy? I didn't even have to think. Weddings are supposed to be a climax, right? The big finish. The curtain call. Fireworks. Champagne. Then fade to black. But the real life that comes after? That's the part no one warns you about. It doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like Sunday morning pancakes, laundry on the floor, your partner's sock mysteriously always on the kitchen counter. It feels good. It feels like quiet. After the wedding, I expected some kind of explosion. A dramatic last stand from the family. Maybe a surprise visit. Another storm of guilt texts. But it was strangely calm. Too calm. For a few weeks, the silence was suspicious. Like I was walking through a haunted house and waiting for the jump scare. But nothing came. Javi and I settled into newlywed life like slipping into a worn-in hoodie. We bought an espresso machine with a wedding gift card and spent Saturday mornings learning how to not ruin it. We hosted small dinners. We started looking at rescue dogs and arguing over names. He liked pickle. I liked waffles. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Until one day, it started again. I opened my email and there it was. A message from Elise. Not a new address. She'd used her work account to sneak through the block list. You've made your point. But you didn't just hurt us. You fractured this family. You took something sacred and made it about your hurt feelings. Hope you're happy. No greeting. No apology. Just blame in a fancier font. I stared at it for a full minute before doing the one thing that finally felt natural. Delete. No reply. No second thought. I wasn't playing that game anymore. But the hits kept coming. My mom started calling from my dad's number. Brandon sent me a friend request on a new Facebook profile with a picture of his kid, like dangling bait. Cole even wrote a post about forgiveness that somehow mentioned those who exile themselves out of pride. It would have made a great Hallmark movie. Too bad I'd stopped watching their channel years ago. I didn't block them again. I just let it sit. That was the power shift. Not in the dramatic clapback. Not in the public airing of receipts. Just choosing silence. Because here's what I realized. I didn't need closure from people who'd never opened the door to begin with. One afternoon, I got a letter in the actual mail from my dad. It was typed like a business memo. Your mother hasn't been the same since you cut contact. I hope one day you'll find forgiveness in your heart for everything that happened. We only ever wanted what was best for you. I read it twice, folded it neatly, then tucked it into the same drawer where I kept the old list, the one that started it all. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I took out that notebook, the list. I flipped past all the old entries, the hurt, the exclusions, the emotional bruises I'd memorized like bad song lyrics. Then I turned to the last page. I took a pen, and I wrote, "None of this defines me anymore." Then I closed the book. That night, Javi and I had dinner on the floor again. Candlelight, cheap pasta, our dog. Yes, we finally got one. His name's Pickles, compromises love, snoring beside us. "You okay?" Javi asked, watching me from across the pizza box. I smiled. "Yeah, actually, I think I'm more than okay." He raised an eyebrow. "Like, dangerously okay? Like, peaceful, which feels suspicious." He laughed, leaned over, and kissed my forehead. "You earned it." And that was the truth. I did. Not through yelling. Not through winning arguments. But by finally choosing myself. Weeks passed. Then months. Eventually, the texts stopped. The emails dried up. And the family who once made so much noise in my life faded into background static. I still thought about them sometimes. Of course I did. Not out of longing, but out of memory. Like old songs that played in the background of your childhood. You don't hum them, but they're still there. Sometimes I wondered what would happen if we crossed paths again. What I'd say. If I'd feel that ache in my chest again. But honestly, I don't think I would. Because I wasn't that kid anymore. I wasn't the forgotten little brother at the birthday table, waiting for someone to notice I hadn't been served cake. I was the man who threw his own party, invited people who brought their own chairs, and danced like no one was grading his moves. I was the husband with the loud laugh, the overwatered houseplants, and the soft mornings filled with nothing but peace. And if that made me the villain in someone else's story, so be it. Because in mine, I'm finally the main